The people that come into your life in the next 3 to 5 years will have the biggest impact on your life over the next 10 years than anything else. For those of you joining us, welcome to Next Level with Jared and Heather. You know, if you haven't listened to us before, there's really 3 things that everything we talk about in Next Level kind of fits within, and it's mindset, health, and belief. Because Heather and I really believe that as people, as human beings, we're really made up of 3 things, and that's our mind, our body, and our spirit. And a lot of people, especially I see this in their professional world or in the business world, entrepreneurs, sometimes they try to separate those things or compartmentalize them, and they don't understand that they're all connected and that they actually affect each other. And so if you're really going to go to the next level in any area of life, even if it's compartmentalized, then you just say, okay, in my health, I want to go to the next level. Or you might be saying, in my mindset, I want to go to the next level. In my business, I want to go to the next level. My income, whatever that is. I think sometimes what a lot of people do is they compartmentalize the things they need to do. Just if you wanted to lose 20 pounds and get in shape or see your abs or get fit, they just think about, okay, what are the things for my health that I need to do to go to the next level? When they don't understand, maybe, is that your mindset is actually a part of that too. It's connected. Your belief and the spiritual side is also connected. So it's all connected. We're not, compartmentalized beings. We are mind, body, and spirit, and everything affects everything. Today, what Heather and I want to share is just, we've learned a lot over the years, a lot of it from failure, and you just keep failing forward. You don't look at failure as something that's permanent. You look at it as a learning experience, and that's a real important thing for anybody that wants to continually go to the next level, is understanding that failure is temporary and we're supposed to fail. Okay. In fact, some of the most successful people have just failed more than everyone else. You look at Richard Branson, you look at, Donald Trump, just in the business arena, not necessarily the political arena, but just in the business arena, he's had more failures than almost anyone. Okay, but he kept going, and then he had massive wins. So just how you view failure is a huge key to your success and your perspective on that. So I've got a list of 10 things that, I kind of look at and say, okay, these are the things that successful people do versus unsuccessful people. And Heather and I, not only can we see this in our own life, when we would get in a rut and just stay at the same level, and a lot of times we say it's like God saying, okay, you're going to go around the mountain again one more time to learn this lesson before I take you to this next level. But not only have we seen these things in our personal life with us, we've seen this now that we train, coach, and teach other people on our team, here in the US and around the world. We see these patterns show up, and we can quickly identify these patterns of, okay, that's something that someone successful does, and that's something that just in general someone that's unsuccessful does. And so, and what's crazy is no matter how much success you have, you never achieve perfection. And so you're always fine tuning and saying, okay, how can I continue to go to the next level? How can this area that I know is someone does this activity or this habit makes them unsuccessful. How can I be better at that? So we're just going to dive in and start kind of going through these things, because these are concepts that everybody can learn from and become better and apply. And so the first one is just that we've learned that successful people set goals, and unsuccessful people, they don't have any goals. They don't have any vision. They don't have any they don't know where they're going. And I think all of us have had times in our lives where we're like, okay, where are we going? What are we shooting for? And so, what I've learned about goals is they need to be written down. They need to be achievable. I learned this in college as an occupational therapist for, dealing with patients. They told us this: your goals have to be written down, or they weren't considered goals. They have to be achievable, and they have to be believable. And number 4, they need a time frame. And so those are kind of the 4 areas about goals. If you're wondering how to set goals, they don't have to be super flowery. They don't need to be super elaborate. In fact, the more simple they are, the better your chances of achieving those goals. So maybe what would you say about, successful people set goals, unsuccessful people, they lack goals. They don't even have any goals.
Yeah, I think too, people keep track of their goal. You have to keep your goals in front of you, or else there's so many distractions that you'll forget, and you'll forget what you're focusing on. And so I know Jared likes to write his goals down on a note card and be able to review it whenever he likes. And I like to write, my goals down every morning when I get up and I'm doing a little bit of journaling or whatever. I like to write my goals down every morning just to start the day, to remember these are my goals. This is what I'm shooting for, so that when I do bump into struggles or when I do get distracted, it's fresh in my mind to get me back on course.
And we all get distracted. Yes. We're living in the most distracted time in human history. It is so easy to get distracted. Even if you're focused, even if you're a high achiever, you're going to get distracted. So if we don't have a game plan every day to keep us focused on the race that we're running, the target that we're shooting towards, if it's not in front of our face, in front of our eyes, we're off course and we find ourselves in the ditch. And this happens even with highly successful people. And so it's like you almost can't go one day without looking at your goals and saying, is everything in my life aligning to head in that direction?
And then part of that is if you find yourself feeling off track, it's probably because at some point you became reactionary and you started, as things came to you, you started dealing with them and putting out fires instead of staying focused on the things that really are important to get you where you need to go.
That's right. And I've had lots of conversations with people that I'll meet them and I'm just getting to know them, and it comes through in their language that they have goals. And then you'll have other conversations with people that it comes through in their language they don't have any goals. They're just waking up and dealing with life as it comes at them every day. And they're reactionary. That's right. And so having goals keeps you on course. It also allows you to prioritize, which is another thing that, as human beings, I think is always a struggle, is setting. We have these huge lists of things, but a lot of times we're not good at prioritizing what is the most important thing. And so someone told me a long time ago, they said, there was this consultant, and he went to a big corporation, and he says, I have an idea that will transform your company, and we're going to increase sales of your entire company, multi-billion-dollar company, by X amount %. And so he had him sign an agreement, and he wouldn't tell him what his idea was, or the principle. He wanted primarily the salespeople and the people that drove the business into the company, what he was going to teach them. So, and this was back in the 1930s. And he said, I want $1 million once I implement this idea to your company. Once we achieve this percentage of growth in your company, then pay me $1 million fee. And so they signed the contract because they said, oh, wow, we'll pay $1 million if this guy can help us grow our company by that amount. We would pay anybody. So that $1 million. So they had high expectations that he was going to come in and teach some, super complicated system and all these things they were going to have to implement. And all he did was he got all of the business development, all the salespeople in the boardroom, and he said, okay, we're going to implement this one principle starting today. And he said, you're going to write down every night before you go to bed, you're going to write down on a 3x5 note card the 6 most important things that you have to get done tomorrow. And it was it's a form of taking goals. Yes, you have to have goals, long-term goals you're shooting at, to even write down 6 things that are the highest priority, because it aligns you to that. But all they did was implement that one simple thing so that when they woke up the next day, they knew what they needed to focus on, and it was an alignment towards their goals. And I think that's just one simple principle when you're talking about prioritizing all the things you have to do, because we all could come up with a list of probably 40 or 50 things that we need to be doing or that needs to get done, but you can't get them all done. And so just implementing that one principle. Okay, what are the most important things that I have to do today or tomorrow to get done? And that's going to keep you aligned on getting towards those goals.
Well, and sometimes you have to to say no to things that are good.
Yes.
And only say yes to things that are great and that actually 100% align. If they're a little sketchy, then you have to say no.
And so that's one of the things I think that people don't understand about goal setting is it's the magic of goal setting is that when we know exactly what we're trying to get to, where we're trying to go, it allows us and it allows our brain to filter and process information and say, no, that doesn't get me closer to where I want to go. Or yes, that gets me closer to where I want to go. It's like, there's a story of this Olympic rowing team, and all of the main athletes on this rowing team for England had, for some reason, and I can't remember if it was health reasons or some other reasons, but all of the main athletes were not able to compete. And so they had a group of alternates. And these guys were in no way, shape, or form, predicted to be successful to represent England in rowing in the Olympics. But one night, after rowing practice, one of them was going to go out to the pub and have a few beers. And he was like, I'm staying out tonight. I've worked hard all week. And someone asked him the question, said, well, does that make the boat go faster? And that became their theme. And it was really about setting priorities, saying yes to the great, saying no to things that are good to be able to say yes to the great. And does it make the boat go faster? But if you don't have a goal, then you can't set priorities, and your brain can't filter out all the information to keep you on track. And I just think that's where so many people today are struggling to get where they want to go, because they don't start with a goal. They don't start with, this is where I want to go. So the second thing that successful people do versus unsuccessful people, and really this has really become a life mantra for me, and it's that successful people take action. Unsuccessful people procrastinate and they wait for everything to be right before they take action. Successful people take action. And a lot of times they don't even know, the action they need to take. And sometimes they even take wrong actions, and that's okay. But the key is taking action. So you have a goal, you know where you want to go, you know what you want to accomplish. The next step is to take, we call it massive immediate action. Because what happens is, whatever that action is, it may or may not be the thing that's going to help you get where you want to go. But a lot of times that particular action, if you'll just take action, it opens up a door to the next thing that is going to help you take that next step to success. So action, action, action to me is always the 3 most important words in success. Action, action, action. And I've consulted with people that they're struggling or they're stuck in a rut. They're not moving along in life the way they want to move. And you could apply this to financial success. You could apply it to relational success. You could apply it to our health, fitness. Just take action. Just go freaking do something. Because then what happens, this is the way God created our brains, is it's like once you take an action, then all of a sudden you have another idea or another revelation or another more information, that things open up that really take you to those levels of success. But you never would have gotten there if you didn't take the first action.
Yep. You have to start pushing the boulder, get it rolling, and then what you need to know along the way will come if you're in action.
And so, we've given people lots of different types of advice, but maybe what are some things maybe you've told people that they're just stuck, they're just in a rut, or maybe they have, an idea, they want to be successful, and to just start.
Yeah, that's what you tell them. Just get going. I mean, there's no time like the present. So waiting for everything to be perfect, waiting for, your office to be great or your business cards to come in or to get your blue check on Instagram or whatever it is, waiting is not gonna get you any closer to your goal.
That's
Only
it.
Action.
I had someone tell me one time, it's the start that stops most people. Mm-hmm. And if we could just, those of you listening to this, if you could just realize that it's the start that stops you from getting to where you want to go. And I think people sit around and someone told me once that people like to analyze the roots of the tree, and they're just staring there, analyzing the roots of the tree. And they're going to go broke analyzing everything because they won't just take action. So I can think of so many times in my career where I was in a rut and I didn't know how to get out of it, or this, it could also just be a major problem or obstacle that you face too. I remember in COVID, they had shut down one of our businesses that we own as restaurants, and they had shut down our restaurants, the dining rooms, and they said, well, you can do takeout. Well, there's no way on earth that our business can survive on just takeout orders. I mean, we can't even pay for the labor based on just takeout orders. And so we have multiple restaurants, and they had shut down all of our dining rooms. And I just remember being almost crippled with fear of, are these restaurants going to go out of business? Are we going to lose a lot of money and this be something very damaging because we've taken this risk and opened these restaurants? They've shut our dining rooms down. What are we going to do? I can't, do I need to furlough everybody and lay everybody off, including our managers? And, someone wise told us, well, try to stay open for takeout with just your managers and keeping them on salary. And I was like, well, we're not going to be able to do it. We're not going to be able to make enough money. We're going to be losing money. We should just shut the place down. But then you still got your lease. You still got all this overhead. And it was just this crippling fear of, what are we going to do? And I remember being paralyzed. So I get it when people feel like they can't move forward, because I've been there. I just felt paralyzed, like, what am I going to do? And I remember being in my office and just having some quiet time and meditating and praying about this. And I felt like what God was laying on my heart was just get up and do something. Like, you can only do what you can do. And so we went out and printed flyers up for specials and family meal deals for our restaurant. And I remember even my son went out with me, and some of my managers went out with me, and we just put flyers on people's front doors. We would spend 5, 6, 8 hours a day putting flyers for takeout food on people's doors. Well, here's what happened. It just created this energy, not just from the ownership, but from the managers. And, I just see that as one simple action, and that action didn't solve all the problems, but it led to other things that allowed us to be barely profitable or break even and survive for that amount of time in business. And a lot of times in business, it's about surviving. And if you can just survive, then you're going to get out of that rut and you're going to go to the next level. So action solves 90% of the problems in business. Even if the first action is not the thing that's going to be the solution, a lot of times that first action will lead you to it. It's almost like, I almost feel like God's sitting there saying, if you'll take action, whatever it is, I'll provide the next step. But I'm not going to provide that next step until you take action. Show me you're a person of action. Show me that you have faith, and just take that action. And then things just start to happen. So the third concept of when we're talking about what successful people do versus unsuccessful people is number 3, they continuously learn. Successful people continuously learn, and unsuccessful people, they really resist learning. Mm-hmm. Like they resist learning, and they have like this fixed mindset, and they'll make excuses that's like, well, that's just not my personality, or I'm not good at that, or I couldn't do that. And versus successful people, they might say, you know what, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how I'm going to do that. Or I'm not right now very good at that. It's okay to be there, mm-hmm. but say, I'm going to learn. So I think probably the majority of our success is buying into the concept of personal growth, continually learning, versus resisting learning and growing and learning new things.
One thing that I'm grateful for is that we've always had people that we could look to that were a few steps further down the path than we were, especially early on in business. We had people that we didn't really get mentored from directly, but we could watch them grow, we could watch them succeed, and we could just sit under them and be tutored and learn. And it just shifted everything in our brain. And so it's not like you have to go out and spend a lot of money. I mean, you can learn anywhere. You can learn on Instagram. And spending some time on social media to learn some things is different than just brain dead scrolling. So, I mean, you should be a lifelong learner. You have to be.
100%. I think a lot of, when we talk about continuously learning versus resisting learning, when I think of just really when our life started to change, it goes back over 20 years ago. And my mentor said this, he said, work harder on yourself than anything else. And that was a new concept to me, because I was like, no, I need to work hard on my business and with effort and all of that, and more sales, more, and all of that's good. But he said, work harder on yourself than anything else. And what he was talking about was personal growth, personal development, leadership. What I've learned is leadership has more to do with leading yourself than other people. And because if you lead yourself and become a person of excellence, a person with leadership and discipline and vision and all these things, you attract people that start to want to follow that. Mm-hmm. So you become a leader by attracting, not by seeking people to lead. Mm-hmm. But that goes back to personal growth. But there's a reason that I talk about action is more important than learning, because the number one way you actually learn things is through action. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of us, you can take the course, you can go to the seminar, you can meet with a mentor, but if you never take freaking action, it ain't gonna happen.
Sometimes on-the-job training, most of the time, on-the-job training is better than anything you read or see in a book. And so just get in the trenches and get your hands dirty and learn on the way. Absolutely.
I was asking a friend of mine that's I met many years ago in Nashville, Tennessee, in another business that we were involved in at the time. He was a brain surgeon, and he lived in Nashville, but we were living in Lubbock, Texas, and he would routinely fly to Lubbock, Texas to do brain surgeries, because he's one of the top guys in the world he called it cracking skulls. And he said, and he, big, huge Tennessee Titans fan. I remember that about him. I don't remember his name, but he would say, yeah, I go out to West Texas because they have a big medical center there, and crack skulls and do brain surgery and do some teaching. And he was just, talked about it very casually, but very intelligent guy at a high skill level of, we're talking brain surgery.
Right.
Literal brain surgery. And I asked him this question. I said, let me ask you something. I said, how many years, first off, I want to know how many years he went to school. And it was over 14 years of specialization in brain surgery, over 14 years of education and studying. And he said even then, he still had to work under someone else and be taught and learn things. And I said, well, let me ask you this question. I said, when you're doing brain surgery, if you had a smart, capable, an intelligent 18-year-old kid and he wants to be a brain surgeon. I said, is it possible that without going to one class, medical school, anything like that, that you could teach him by him just standing beside you and you teaching him and showing him how to do brain surgery like you? And he said, absolutely. He said, we learn more about brain surgery by doing it and watching other people do it than all of the 14 years of school. He said, so if I had an apprentice, he said, probably in 18 to 24 months, I could teach someone that hadn't been through medical school, knows nothing about surgery or medicine, but through on-the-job training, I could teach them how to do brain surgery. And so it just goes to show that all the studying in the world, all the classes, the courses, the seminars, they mean nothing if you don't take action. But so a lot of the growth and continuous learning that we're talking about is personal growth. Working on yourself, growing, becoming more. The next concept, success. We're talking about successful people versus unsuccessful people. This is a big one. And I think this holds a lot of people back. And it's because of fear. Is a lot of times fear holds people back because from going to that next level, because this is a truth and eventually you have to face this, is that successful people take risks, and unsuccessful people, they avoid risk. And a lot of it has to do with our comfort zones. Some of us, you might hear someone say, well, they're risk averse. Well, it's good to be wise and count the cost when we talk about risk, but everything in life is risk. And the reality is you're never going to go to that next level if you don't take risk. And so, what would you say about that? Like because we've seen successful people that we know and ourselves, we've had to take massive risks. And sometimes they don't always work out. But again, it's that failure thing. Do you keep going forward and did you learn from it, or do you let it take you out of the game?
Yeah, I am a risk averse person. I don't like to take risk. But you do like to take risk. And so I've learned a lot watching how you take risks, and whether it goes the way you want it or it goes a different way, at the end of the process, you're always further along because you learn so much. Sometimes you learn more when you take a risk and it doesn't work out well. Sometimes you learn so much through that the next risk you take, you go higher than you ever would have if you hadn't had the failure before. But if you don't ever take a risk,
that's right.
I don't know.
No, that's what I remember. There's been some things where we took some risks and maybe it didn't work out, but then instead of, you're upset, this sucks, whatever, but at the end of the day, I came to the conclusion that, okay, thank you, God, for this lesson. Because I'm here, and once I'm here, if I had to learn that lesson, it would be way more painful. I'd rather learn the lesson of pain from taking a risk here than when I'm here. And so a lot of times I think God's preparing us for things in the future that are way bigger than what we're doing now, but we're never going to get there if we don't take some risks. So can you think of some areas maybe where you've taken risks or we've taken risks in the past and that we learned from it and, it ended up being a good thing, and then risks we've taken that did work out and it's been an awesome thing.
I mean, I'm sure I can. I mean, just the fact that we came to Florida on vacation and then decided to sell our house and send for our things was a pretty big risk. But it's turned out great, and we're glad we're here. It's been great for our family. Our businesses are doing great, but that was a huge risk.
It was a big risk. I remember, and I remember there were some things going back 10 years ago that there was some things with our business that it maybe didn't seem like it was a wise time for us to make a move from Texas to Florida, because there's some things going on with the business, with the company, some things that the company had gotten some bad PR and sales were down, and we were worried. Well, is this the right time to be making a big move?
Our kids were not happy.
But we just knew. It's like we knew in our gut this is the right move at the time. And it wasn't made on a whim. It was made with a lot of thought, counsel. I would say when you're taking risks, one of the very best things you can do is to seek out wise counsel. There's
lots of different perspectives.
Yeah, there's wisdom in the counsel of many. Now, when you're going to take a risk and you're going to go seek counsel, you want a broad spectrum of counsel. You want people that are in a position of where you want to go. You don't want to go to, your broke brother-in-law. You don't want to go to your, your best buddy that
graduated there, went to preschool there, never left town.
Right. That's right. And hadn't had, success. You want to go to people that have taken those risks and have won, and people that have also taken some risks and lost, but they still became successful. You want to listen to those types of people. So wisdom in the counsel of many, but it doesn't mean you have to do exactly what they say either.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you gather all the information and data when you're taking a risk. You do as much research as you can. You can't take too long, okay, because sometimes you miss opportunities. But then we get some counsel, some wise counsel, and then at the end of the day, we take all of that and we say, in light of my current circumstances and my past experiences, what is the best situation for
and
right
including
now?
Including my future goals.
That's right. Including my future goals, where I'm wanting to go. What is the best decision to make here? And when you take all of that and you go with this, you go with your gut. Because we say it's our gut, but a lot of times I think it's our spirit telling us what we need to do, the direction we need to go.
Yeah. And I think something that we've done, really well, and it kind of goes back to what you're talking about a minute ago, is whenever there's been something like that, like the move to Florida, or there's been a number of other things, but when we're doing something like that, like we'll talk about it and be like, yeah, and it kind of simmers, and then but we both mentally, I can tell, we've never even had this conversation, but I know this is what we both do. We both mentally 100% go there, like we live in Florida, and we start going that way, and we start kind of functioning that way, taking counsel that way, doing all that stuff. Like the door is open, but we're also very aware to things. We're getting counsel, we're doing these other things. The kids are upset. This looks complicated, but we keep going. We keep taking action. We keep doing stuff, and then we reevaluate, and we reevaluate, and we reevaluate. And before long, either the door shuts, and we're like, that wasn't what we're supposed to do, or it keeps staying open.
Totally. And then once you've made a decision, you just go for it, all in. So that would be my advice to people for you to go to the next level. Is you're going to have to take some risks, some over and over and over, to truly go the next level and build something and become who God created you to become. And because that takes faith, and faith is trust at its core that it's going to work out. And then sometimes when it doesn't, what you have to do is say, look, you don't go say, well, I made the wrong decision. That was a bad decision. No, that's not what successful people do. Successful people say, how can I learn from this? Because we're always looking towards the future. We're always looking towards what's next. So one thing when you're looking at taking a risk that has always helped me make good decisions is to ask yourself this simple question. What is the worst thing that can happen? And then what is the best possible thing that could happen from this? Because usually it's never going to be one of those. It's usually somewhere in the middle. It's usually somewhere in the middle.
And there's always some things that come about that you actually like better than what your best case scenario was that you hadn't even thought of. And anything that isn't great actually ends up teaching you something too.
That's right. And so
I say, even though I'm extremely risk averse.
Yes. So when you go through the process of that and ask yourself that question, what is the worst thing that could happen when I'm looking at taking a risk? And you go down that road mentally, like go down that road of the worst possible thing that could happen. Because here's what happens is now what it does for me is it just disarms all that fear. It totally takes away all that fear and says, you know what? Even the worst possible thing that could happen here is not that bad. I could live through that and I can bounce back and we would be okay. And so if you'll just go through that mental exercise when you're taking risks, what is the worst thing that could happen? Go down that road, feel those emotions, and it will disarm a lot of that fear. Because then you realize, you know what? The worst possible thing that could happen is not that bad. I've been through worse and come out on the other end. And
staying here and not taking the risk might actually be worse.
Right. And learn some things from it and became better. And then go down the road of what's the best possible thing that could happen. Okay. Because that's the risk versus reward. And then understand it's probably going to be somewhere in the middle. So successful people take risks. Unsuccessful people, they avoid risk. And a lot of it has to do with, their comfort zone. They're not willing to step out of that comfort zone. Number 5, again, I see all these principles and I'm like, well, that's the most important one. And then I see another. That's what I think, that there's so many principles that are equally so important to your success that you got to pay attention to these things. But sometimes it's also that we're nailing it in several areas, but we're missing this one thing. And I think this is one of those things for a lot of people. I think they have all the habits, all the keys to success, and they're missing this in their life. And it's persistence. Successful people are persistent. Okay. And unsuccessful people, they give up too easy. And this might be one of the hardest things too about success. One of my mentors, Nathan Rex, he said, Jared, your success. And he was mentoring me. He was coaching me on a call. And this was when I was, not near the level of financial success that we have today. This was many, many years ago. And he was talking to me about my potential. And he said, Jared, you can go so big, you can go so high in this industry that we're both a part of. And he said, but it's going to be dependent upon your ability to show up every day with the same level of enthusiasm and excitement that you showed up at on day one. And very few people have the ability to do that. And if people can master that, they can actually screw everything else up and still win.
Yep.
If you can master persistency, which is really just about showing up every day, just freaking show up.
Stick and stay.
If you just show up every day, you're going to win. It might not be pretty. It might not be perfect, but persistent, consistent. And, one of our leaders that we've mentored to become very successful, he says, even be consistent about being persistent. And people that don't win, they just give up too easy. And they go out and they try something, and maybe their coach, their mentor, the system they're trying to work, or an idea they have. It may not be anyone telling them. They go out and try to implement it, and they run up against a wall. And they say, well, this just isn't for me. Or this is not my personality, or I'm just not good at this. And a lot of times, how do you know? You go make, I talk about the business world a lot. So you go out and make 5 sales calls and you get 5 no's. And you say, well, this just doesn't work. Well, how do you know? How do you know that if you talk to 100 people that you don't get 20 yeses? Because there's something called the safety in number and law of averages. And, Jim Rohn, I was listening to, one of his CDs back in the day. We didn't have podcasts back in the day. We had CDs and pop them in the car and listen to them. And
we actually started during cassettes. And
that's right.
After rewind.
That's right. I didn't want to age myself.
You're welcome.
By talking about cassettes. So I want to talk about CDs. But I was listening to a Jim Rohn CD years ago. And he said, Sinaloa, Sinaloa. And I said, what does that word mean? It's an acronym. It means there's safety in numbers and law of averages. That if you do something long enough, a ratio will appear. And he said, you know what? You might have to make 20 sales calls to get 1 yes. And he said, you might look over to the sideline and someone else, that either one of your competitors or even someone that works in the same company as you, they only have to talk to 3 people to get 1 yes. And it takes you 20. And he said, you know what? You can still win. You can still beat them if you're willing to talk to more people. Because if it takes you talking to 20 people to get 1 yes, you can go talk to 100 people and get 5 yeses. And that person that talks to 3 to get 1 yes, they might only talk to 6 people and they get 2 yeses. You can still beat them. So there's safety in numbers, and the law of averages proves true if you're willing to be persistent, consistent, and don't give up easily. Our mentor, Charlie Regis, said you got to have a dogged determination, is what he called it, and a burning desire to continue to show up every day. And everyone that I've met that's highly successful, every single one of them, that's a common theme that I've seen. They are persistent. And every person that is unsuccessful, that's actually given effort, but they didn't experience wins, experience success, I could point it out to that. They're not willing to be persistent every day. And if they are, they're not willing to show up with the same level of excitement, enthusiasm, and energy that they did on day one. Next principle, successful people accept responsibility. Unsuccessful people blame others. So there's a concept just called owning it. And the faster that you can learn to own it versus blaming others, you're on your way. And I didn't learn this until just a few years ago. So learn this concept early on. Just own it. When you screw up, own it. Because the reality is we're all humans and we're going to make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes of omission and commission. We're going to make mistakes because we're just going and we're in action, and you're going to make mistakes. But then we also make mistakes of omission, meaning we're not doing anything. We're not doing enough, not taking action. So we're going to make mistakes. The first thing is to own it. Whether you do, especially when you do something that affects other people, it hurts another person, maybe with your actions, your words, be the first person to own it. Mm-hmm. And now you've diffused it and it's gone, versus blaming others. And blaming other people really is a pattern in people's lives. They want to blame the government. They want to blame Joe Biden or Donald Trump for why they're not successful. They want to blame, all these situations and circumstances that are out there, when in reality, even sometimes when it's not your fault, it's still better to take ownership of a situation because it's freeing and it's empowering. Because the minute that I blame someone else, I've just taken away my power to change the situation, and I've become powerless. So there's a book out there called Extreme Ownership, and it's about this concept, and he teaches that, look, even when there's an injustice, even when it truly is someone else's fault, it's not going to serve you to stay in that mindset that it's their fault. He said, what's going to serve you to take you to the next level is just go ahead and take ownership yourself of it. Because now you understand, okay, I own this. It's not their fault. I could have done this. And you see this with the most elite of the elite athletes that are the best. The best of the best athletes, what we'll see in sports is they never blame the team. The very best coaches that have ever been, they never blame the players. They take ownership. Even if the player dropped the ball, they'll say it's our fault that the kids weren't prepared or the athletes weren't prepared. Bear Bryant, University of Alabama, and arguably Nick Saban has become the greatest college football coach, won more championships than anyone, but for a long time, Bear Bryant, that coached at Alabama many years before him, was one of the most legendary names in coaching, not just for wins, but just honor, respect, and everything that he taught about being a man and being a football player. And what people often said was one of the college athletes could have made the biggest blunder and lost the game, and he would never blame anyone else. He would always take extreme ownership and say, you know what, this is on me. We could have done a better job in preparing the team for the game. So I'm sure there's things you could talk about when we talk about accepting responsibility. That's what successful people do versus blaming others. Because we've all done it. We're all guilty.
Yeah. Almost on a daily basis. I mean, because life's moving fast. There's lots of people involved everywhere, and it can just get messy. But taking responsibility for your actions and what you did or didn't do, it's also a really good form of personal growth.
I remember we were at a conference one time, and somebody got up and said something, and I didn't like it when they said it. And usually sometimes those are times when it's because we need to write it down because we need to grow. And here's what he said. He got up and he said, listen, wherever you're at right now in life, you need to take complete ownership that it is my fault. It is no one else's fault for exactly where I'm at right now. My bank account, where it's at, that's my responsibility. It's my fault for where it's at. My body, my health, it's my fault. My relationships, it's my fault. And until we take ownership of that, we can't change it. And I remember him saying that, and it rocked my world because I was like, I don't like that. No, there are things in my life that it's other people's fault. It's the culture's fault. It's the government's fault. It's the whoever's fault. It's the company's fault. We see that in our industry a lot. It's the company's fault. Taking complete ownership for your business, your health, your relationship is so freeing because now you realize, okay, I have the power to change this. You've empowered yourself when you take ownership.
There's a difference in a stage of life you're at when someone makes that statement. Like you are where you are today because of the decisions and the actions that you've taken. Well, if you're in a good way and on your way, you're like, that's right, I did it. But if you're like overdrawn and trying to figure out which bill to pay, you're like, no, it's their fault. So yeah, as soon as you learn, like, I am where I am because I chose to be here.
Yep.
One way or the other.
And I can think of many times where I was in a place in life that I didn't want to be at or dealing with something related to business, finances, relationships, my health, and I was completely convinced it was not my fault. And the moment that, and it was someone else's fault and was playing the blame game, and even was in that space for days or weeks or longer. And it's such a crippling place to be. Mm-hmm. Because when you're blaming others for your problems or where you're at, even if it's their fault, it's even more crippling. Mm-hmm. Because you don't feel like you have any control and you play the victim. And someone told us recently, they said when things happen to you, especially injustice, he said, don't play the victim. And he said that's what he's learned that very successful people do.
It's funny too because our boys are a little bit older and now Creed is younger, and it's funny because you're saying this is making me think of driving home in the car with him, and he somebody at school, she told on me and I don't like her, and she didn't invite me to her birthday because she said I was being mean, but I wasn't being mean, but she was being mean. And I'm like, well, if she was really being mean, did you think about talking to the teacher? No, she wouldn't believe me. And it's just this constant perpetual thing where he was being picked on and he was the victim. And I was like, well, why don't you just pick someone else to hang out with? Oh, but it's a part of growing, right? Like we teach our children the same thing, but it's very eye-opening and humbling when you catch yourself sounding like you're 5 years old.
Right. It's very easy for an adult person to be in their 30s, 40s, or 50s and be acting, and we can recognize, okay, I'm acting like a kindergartner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I told Creed yesterday, if you'll quit whining, I'll quit whining. Is that a deal? Because I was whining in my mind, and then he started whining out loud, and I was like, that's what I sound like. So, yeah.
That's it. I know David Goggins talks a lot about that. We got one of his books right there, Extreme Ownership. It's on you. Successful people accept responsibility. Unsuccessful people continue to blame others. And until there's some people that's another one. Until they change that, your life's not going to change. Until you stop blaming other people and take extreme ownership for everything that's in my life right now, where I'm at, my finances, my relationships, my health, I'm at where I'm at right now because of me and no one else. Until you do that, you're going to stay at the same level.
Right. But until you do that, you're never going to move forward, because you can't move forward and change that until you accept that and make the changes in yourself to go further.
100%. So this next concept is really big, and it's that successful people network and build relationships and connections. And that's the reason they network. I think a lot of people get told, oh, you need to be networking. Well, the reason you're networking is to build relationships and connections. And there's nothing more valuable in business, and I would say in life, than good connections and relationships. So successful people do that. They network. Unsuccessful people tend to isolate themselves. And so when I think about this, one of the things that comes to mind is I'm naturally an introvert. We've talked about that. But, if I took a personality test, I'd probably test out as an extrovert today, because I've had to become, a person that deals with people. And so, but my nature is to be more introverted. That's when I'm more comfortable. That's when I'm like maybe at ease, at peace, and things like that. So, but, success was so important to me that I knew I had to build relationships and connections with people to be successful. And so unsuccessful people isolate themselves. And I think they even know that it's not good for them. They know that it doesn't serve them well to isolate themselves. But what I think about is my business coach said, he said, it's the hands you shake, not the grades you make. And so we've even taken that statement and applied that to our kids in school and saying, look, we want you to get good grades because we want you to be a person of excellence that does the best you can. But we're also not those parents that are like, you have to get straight A's and everything in our life is going to be, we're going to structure it to where that is the most important thing in our life, because it's important to do your best, but straight A's in school don't determine success. I know a lot of people that made straight A's that are broke, and not just broke, but maybe miserable or unhappy as adults. So it's the hands you shake, not the grades you make. I would argue it's not just about business. It's also about our relationships with people. It's about our health, that we're healthier people when we're networking, when we're building relationships with quality people, when we're building connections with quality people that may have something that they can put into our lives, or they may be a connection that can connect us to someone in our life that's going to take us to the next level. Mm-hmm. What would you have to say about that on building relationships and connections, networking? We know that's what successful people do versus isolating ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, it is true. I know it's true. It's just still not my bend. It's not my, you will never, if you ever see me sign up for a networking group, you probably better come check on me, because that's not me. Because I'm the person that's like, I have my friend, I'm good. I don't need any more. But it is, I mean, in the business world, that doesn't work. Because, and really even in life, I mean, I watch it work because Jared is very good at it. And so I watch him do it and I see the benefits of it. And, you know, I'll never be as good as Jared at it. It will never be natural for me to do it. And that's okay. There's other people that won't be natural for you either, but you still have to get a little better and learn to get better. And you have to understand that you're not going to change. Now that you hear this, tomorrow doesn't mean you're going to be a perfect networker. You're going to have to go through the bumps and bruises of getting better. But it's in business, it's like you have to. I can't even think about, like, you know, one of the investment things that you're doing right now that's like a, I don't know, like passive kind of, I mean, most of your investments are passive, but one of them is, you know, someone that was in our main business years ago, and then, you know, he's not here anymore, he's doing something else, and he called you up. Well, if you hadn't built a relationship with him and all that, then that wouldn't have come about. You wouldn't have been a part of his real estate thing and done that. And so, and most of our businesses are from people that you've met over the years. And it wasn't when you met them even that at the actual time that you realized the importance they were going to have later down in your life.
That's right. It was a connection that introduced me to the founder of Walk-Ons, which was the franchise restaurant that we were one of the first franchisees for and that we invested in. It was a connection. And really that connection came from another connection. I was doing business with Michael Papajohn, who is an actor in Hollywood. And I used to go out. He's been in a lot of movies, Transformers, Terminator. He's usually the bad guy. Waterboy. He was the guy that killed Spider-Man's uncle. Running away in the original Spider-Man, jumped in the elevator.
Was the March on Selma?
Yeah, he was the main police officer, the bad guy in Selma.
He's really good at being hateable.
Yeah, so
but super likable in real life.
So Michael Papajohn, came from, and really, I didn't know Michael Papajohn. It was another business networking event of a friend of mine, Rob DeBoer, that years ago that introduced me to Michael Papajohn. And I used to go out to Los Angeles and do meetings for our Pure business with Michael Papajohn. And then he moved to Louisiana because Hollywood was doing a lot of movies in Louisiana. They were doing a lot of tax credits in the state to bring movie making to Louisiana. So I went there to work with him. And he introduced me to another individual that raised money for doing private films and, film festivals, named Isaiah Laborde. And Isaiah, told me, you need to meet Brandon. He owns Walk-Ons, because we went to eat at a Walk-Ons, and I said, man, I'd love to bring one of these to my hometown where we live in Texas. And he said, well, you need to meet Brandon. And so he set up a meeting and we met Brandon, the founder. And I told him, if you ever franchise this, let me know. So that,
and in the meantime of that, just like, this is just how crazy this is in the meantime of all of that, I think you'd already talked to Brandon and want to franchise it because you had talked to me about it. I went with you to New Orleans to do a Pure meeting, and we did it in the back of a Walk-Ons.
That's right.
During a Texas Tech football game. Like,
that's right.
Everything was just like so intermingled, but it all came so.
That's right. And so a lot of times I think what we have to realize as human beings, when we're talking about this basic principle, that successful people network, build relationships and connections. Unsuccessful people isolate themselves. I really believe that God, a lot of times, the answer to some of our problems and the answer to that next stepping stone to go to that next level, this is not just about success and financial success. This is about we're mind, body, spirit. Next level is about mindset, health, and belief. That there's issues we're all facing in our lives that God will send people. A lot of times he doesn't send the solution and just tap you on the head and solve your problems. He sends us people that a lot of times have a solution, or they are a connection to a solution. And so, but we're never going to have all those wins. We're never going to have all those solutions if we're not open to the people that God's going to send in our lives. So networking, building relationships and connections is really one of the most important things and investments you can make in your life to just go to the next level. And nothing good ever comes from isolating ourselves. Yes, we need rest. Yes, we need, especially the introverts among us, we need to retreat, revive, rejuvenate, and that's huge important. But no good ever comes out of just complete isolation. I can't think of anything. So what would you say to people that are like you, Heather, that, you say, okay, I have a tendency to lean towards isolating myself. Like it's not the first thing on your list of getting excited about something is not going to a networking event and building more connections and building more relationships, because relationships are hard. Okay. Even your closest relationships are hard. So certainly they're hard with other people. So what would you tell people knowing that, okay, God has more for you in your life through connections and relationships out there, and you know that, but you have a tendency to be like, no, my preference would be to not do that and lean towards isolation?
Well, I don't know yet, because I still myself lean to isolation, and I don't, I do know that, you can't do that to be successful, and I know that there's a time and a place to network and to do that. But then I also know for me, I'm never going to be you. Mm-hmm. And so if you're more like me and you're more of an isolator, then you better really make good use of the times you are given to network and use it to its full extent and take all the benefits you can from it. Because, I don't think just because we're giving you 10 things successful people do and unsuccessful people don't do, doesn't mean that you have to just become this person that only does these 10 things and doesn't do these 10 things. Or if you lean more on this unsuccessful side, that doesn't make you a bad person. It just points out areas where you're weaker. And so you've got to either double down on the places that you're strong and see the weaknesses for what they are. And then you've got to learn to just, okay, take the bits of networking that you have in your life and make the most of them.
And I'm going to say this because I've seen you do this in networking situations where you're with me, we're in a group of people, we're networking, we're literally, okay, we want to meet some new people. It could be at a conference, we do that routinely. It could just be, who knows, dinner with a group of friends and there's some people you don't know. We get into those situations and, I've seen this where you're on my arm. We go to a what would be considered networking event, and, it may not be your first choice of place you want to be, but here's some things I've seen, some tools I've seen you do that I think could help some people in that social situation. Is number one, and I learned this from John Maxwell. He said, never go into a room full of people. He said, you're going to be nervous and you're going to have self-confidence issues if you're just thinking about yourself going into that room. And, well, how does my hair look okay? Am I wearing the right thing? And when we're super self-conscious about thinking about ourselves, it's awkward. It's hard to go into that situation versus be a others-focused person. And I've seen you do this because you can recognize that there's other people in the room that feel just the way you do, that it's probably not their first choice to be there networking, and you've gone out of your way to go up to them and approach them and give them a compliment, an honest, genuine, real compliment. And so that's just one tip I think that I would give to people. If you are nervous about networking, if you just don't enjoy that social setting, is before you go in, stop and pause and say, okay, I'm not here to think about myself. And my, we all have an ego and me and thinking about that. I'm going to switch my mindset, and I'm going to be others focused, and I'm going to go make someone else feel comfortable. I'm going to go make someone else feel valued, appreciated, or noticed. Just something, it could be, hey, I love your shoes. Something as simple as that. So that would be a tip that I would give people with networking.
One thing that I would say, I just thought of this, is like when we go into those situations, I'm looking, because like I already know, like Jared's going to be making all the connections, because it's just natural. So if I do make a connection, like if I make a connection with someone, I'm going to probably get their phone number and all that, and then I'm going to give them to you. It's kind of what I do. But just like,
if it's a business relationship,
right.
But if it was someone that just is a great connection for something with our kids, like our sports or a health thing that we've learned or something like that.
But I always have my ears open to, like, when I'm hearing people talk and everything, like what I know we need or we're looking for or whatever. Like, I mean, even just when we went to that last conference that we went to in Tampa, and there was like a get up and introduce yourself, like play a game thing, which are my favorite things to do. I love those icebreaker things. But this girl and I visited a little bit. And then a little bit later, she got up and asked this question and said she had 1 million followers on social media. And I'm like, holy cow. Well, I had just gotten her name and number, but not in a way that I was meaning to network with her. So, it works out okay when you're like me, if you have someone. So if you are like me and you have a friend that's good at it, then go with them to their networking things and learn. You can learn a lot from them, but you're also a whole nother set of eyes with a different perspective than your friend. And you just have to learn by being around people that are better than you.
That's it. Because at the end of the day, just like we say, more meetings mean more money, more connections mean more success. More connections, more relationships mean more success. And it's kind of like this. A long time ago, I didn't like it that that's the way it is. That it's the hands you shake, not the grades you make. That a lot of success, we can look around in the world and we can say, well, they know the right people. And so then we play the victim and we say, well, they must know the right people and they have all the right connections. And we can say, you know what? I'm not going to complain about it, of the way the world is. Jim Rohn says we don't get up and say, well, I don't like it that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. We evaluate that and say that's just the way it is. So if that's the way the world works, you have to be, I talk about this in my book, Next Level Mindset. We have to be like the salmon in Alaska. They swim upstream against the river to go spawn, and it's hard. And I feel like that's what so many people are doing. They don't like certain ways of the world is. And so they say, well, I'm just not going to do that. And so what you have to do is turn around after they spawn, they swim downstream because they're going with the flow of the river. And so once you can recognize the ways the world works,
once you realize the game you're actually playing.
That's it. Once you know what the chessboard looks like, we can either complain about it and be a victim and say, well, I don't like the way that it works. I don't like the rules. I don't like the rules of success, so I'm not going to play. And you have that right to do that. Or you can say, no, I want to go to the next level. I'm going to evaluate the chessboard and say, this is the way the game is played. And I'm going to play the game. And I'm going to embrace, not only am I going to play it, I'm going to embrace it and learn how to get good at it. And
I'm going to draw up my own plays.
I'm going to draw my own plays. That's right. I'm going to use wisdom and counsel. And I'm going to play the game as hard as I can. And networking is part of the game, because the people that come into your life in the next 3 to 5 years will have the biggest impact on your life over the next 10 years than anything else. The people that come into your life. There's nothing else that will impact your life more than relationships and connections in the next 3 to 5 years.
And I will say to this, I just thought of this too. Like, so I was thinking about like our little health journey with Campbell over the last year and a half. And I do network, because the person that actually is getting us the best results is someone that I've known for 8 years. But I don't know how to say this. This might come out wrong, but like, I don't like the networking aspect, because I don't like feeling like I'm going to meet you to see what I can get from you, see how you can benefit. Like, that just rubs me wrong. Yep. Like, I don't like it. Mm-hmm. And I really am like, I'm probably one of the people that's like, I'll just stay broke then. I just think it's wrong and I don't like it. But I do know that.
Don't like the way the game is played.
I don't like the game. I'm not playing. I'm going to take my toys and go home. But I do know that, like, I do it. I just do it in a different way and for different reasons. But like, you know, someone that I met that gave me facials when we very first moved here, probably one of the very first people I ever met,
right,
is now the dermatologist helping us treat Campbell. And I trust her with anything.
And you said the key word there, help. When you define and see networking as a way that you can actually really help me, and hopefully I can help you too, then it diffuses your anxiety about it. Mm-hmm. So the next thing that successful people do versus unsuccessful is, this is an obvious one, but it's not always, you know, I think it's becoming more and more obvious, and it shows up, you know, success leaves clues, is successful people are physically active and unsuccessful people are sedentary.
Well, I know that I get a lot more done on days I exercise than on days I don't. And usually what's funny about it is the days I don't exercise, it's because I don't think I have the time to do it, because I have so much to do. But if I would have taken 20 minutes and gotten my blood flowing, I would have gotten way more done than skipping my workout and trying to crush out more stuff.
Absolutely. So I think that if people would just recognize that your physical health and your mental health are tied to moving and exercise and being active. And we can't win in all these other areas of life that we're trying to freaking win in. We're trying to win financially. We're trying to win in our relationships. We're trying to win in our health. And when I say health, that encompasses physical and mental, and they're tied together. And we can't win if we're not active. And so I like to tell people, just get out and move. Like, if you feel like you're sedentary and you're, okay, I need to be doing something, just go for a walk. One of the healthiest things that anybody can do. It doesn't matter if you're overweight and you need to lose weight. It doesn't matter. Maybe you're not overweight, but you're just not healthy. You're not feeling good. You have mental health issues, okay, is rampant in our country, especially after the 2 years of pandemic that people went through and all the things of dealing with that. We have a massive mental health crisis going on in our country, probably globally from lockdowns. One of the most important things you can do for your health, easiest to do, is to get out and go for a walk. One of my buddies, he's a health coach, and he researches all the different forms of exercise. He's one of the biggest experts in the world on eating and performance, as far as your macros and protein and carbs and all that. And this is a former bodybuilder, former Division I college football player. And what he's coaching everybody on is go for a brisk walk, 1, 2, or 3 miles. Yes, 3 is better, but if you only have time to go walk 1 mile, go do it. And I don't know anyone, unless you don't have legs, okay, that can't get out and go for a walk. So start there. And what happens is, activity is just like anything else. It's a domino. It goes back to the action principle. If you'll just take action and go do that, then you want to do a little bit more. And those dominoes start to fall, and you look up, and 6 months later, and we have all this change. So successful people are physically active. Unsuccessful people are sedentary, and you have to recognize that that plays a role in your overall success, finances, relationships, mental and physical health.
And I'll say this too. So my mom lost her husband almost a year ago. I don't remember in my life really exercise being ever a thing for her, like maybe hit and miss a couple times in my life. But I literally think the fact that she started going on walks after he passed, and she now walks every single, it doesn't matter what the temperature is outside. She walks every single day. I was talking to her about it yesterday. I'm like, well, how far do you walk? She doesn't know. She just has her route and she does it every single day. But then so she did that for a while and that's what she was doing. And then she was like noticing that it was trashy. So she would take a trash bag and she would pick up trash on her walk. Well, now she swims. So she goes for a walk every day and then she comes over and she swims. And my mom is very creative, an artist. That's how she's wired. And, yesterday brought Creed home from school and he said, oh, Non's here. So we went outside to see. She was swimming. Her pool at her condo place isn't heated. So she was swimming over here. And she said, I'm about to break my record. And I said, you are? She goes, yeah, watch me break my record. And so we watched her swim and she got back and she said, that was 91 laps. And I'm like, you're 74 years old. She just swam 91 laps. She's already gone for, I think, probably about a 3-mile walk today. But I would say it's probably kept her alive this year. Because she's in probably the saddest place she's ever been. She's never lived on her own.
And kudos to her because, Larry, which was your stepfather that she was married to for many years, I think we'd all have to agree, lived a very sedentary life the last few years of his life. The last few years of his life was very sedentary. And so when you're living with someone, sometimes it's hard to break out because it's easy to say, well, they're sedentary, so I'm going to be more sedentary. But for her to, after her loss, take action, get out there, go for walks. Now she's swimming. And you can see it. You can see it on her face. You can see it in her demeanor. We can see it in her mental health, in her mind, that just being active, that one little thing she's winning in areas of life.
And it's interesting, I don't really know what motivated her to start or what, but she told me, in the beginning, she said, when I go on my walks, I talk to Larry. And she said, I don't know if that's weird or not. She said, but that's what I do. And so I think that kind of motivated her every day. Like she was like, I'm going to go on a walk and talk to Larry. Well, she told me about a month ago, she's like, it's kind of funny and I feel kind of bad, but when I go on my walks now, I don't talk to Larry anymore. And I said, what? You don't? And she said, I don't know what to tell him. I don't have anything to say. And so it's like, it's been a part of her healing process. And it's just such a simple thing. I mean, she's just going walking and she's picking up the trash. In her mind, she's not healing. She's not anything. But I've watched just that little bit of movement. And she's not like lifting heavy weights. And she's not swimming fast. I mean, it is just her pace. But it has literally kept her alive, I'm certain.
That's awesome.
Which would be successful, right?
Absolutely.
More than unsuccessful.
That's
to
right.
Be alive.
That's what we're talking about here. And so the next principle is that kind of goes along this same line when we're talking about health, which is one of our 3 pillars we talk about on Next Level. Mindset, health, belief, mind, body, spirit. Is principle number 9 is eating. Successful people eat for fuel and unsuccessful people eat for pleasure. Now, I'm going to preface that by saying we're all guilty, okay, of falling into these statements about success are not, okay, if you do this one time, you're not going to be successful. These are areas of principle. So when you start to understand successful people eat for fuel and unsuccessful people eat for pleasure. Okay, we all have food that we like to eat for pleasure, but it's how often do we do it? And what is our primary view towards food? And I know, I've seen it, I know in Heather's life where we're really, we have some goals, okay? And it could be anything. They could be business, family, relationship, health goals, but we have some goals. And you're like, okay, I've got a 90-day plan and I'm focused, and you're taking action. You kind of automatically start to see food as fuel versus food as pleasure. Because just in little things like, well, what do you want to eat, this or that? And I know I'm kind of the foodie. Okay. So I'd be more willing to spend a little bit more time figuring out to have exactly what I want. Maybe what advice would you give to people? This is something where they would say, okay, I know I got to get better in this area. How do I start to see food as fuel versus just eating for pleasure?
I don't know the answer to that. That's, I think, a question for a more intelligent person than me. But I don't know that there's like a perfect place. I could just speak from where I am. My guilty pleasure is candy. I'm like a 5-year-old, and I want all the gummy stuff, all the cinnamon bears, all the sour punch. I love all the gummy. But I don't, Jared will be like, let's go out to eat. That's like the last thing I pretty much ever want to do, because I don't find it, I don't know, it's not a thing for me. But I think a lot of times people eat out of boredom, stress. And so if you can find why you're eating, why you're seeing food as not just fuel, if you can find out what that root is and then address that, I'm bored, because that's, or even this would be eating for boredom. I know my dad says this a lot. He'll, sit down in the evening at the end of the day, and we're going to watch a ball game or something, and he'll say, I'm going to pop some popcorn so I can stay awake while I'm watching this game or whatever. But I think, and that's, that's funny, haha, but I think we do that. We sit down and we're going to watch TV, and so we get some snacks out, basically to keep us awake and to keep us interacting and moving and not just sitting there, because we don't want to do that. But, I think you have to just take where you are and figure out why. And you have to have a reason to see it that way.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's just being conscious. I think it goes back to, if you're really going to make a shift in this area, you have to set some goals, going back to principle number 1 of your health. And that could just be for general health, because maybe you have a chronic health issue, and it's going to be good for you to make some changes in what you put in your body. Me, I'm a type 1 diabetic. So it could be about that, about health issues and general health, or anti-aging, people that are getting elderly. So you have to have a goal, or it could be a fitness goal. Fitness goals are great because now, again, you're setting a goal, you're setting a target, and now the behaviors have to line up and start to change, and it gives you tracks to run on to get to that goal. So I think if you don't have a goal of some kind, this one's going to be really tough for most people.
I think with eating and food too, you have to be something that's helped me, that's how I'll say it, is that I became mindful of how I felt after I ate certain things. So that started when the whole carb thing was going on and everything, and people were like, don't eat bread, and I'm like, whatever, if I go out to eat and they put bread on the table, I'm eating all of it asking for more. But then as I started hearing things,
which, by the way, we're one of the only societies that
eats a loaf of bread
before their dinner when they go out to eat. I don't think any of us, I don't think you've ever, because you cook meals for us at home.
I don't get out a loaf of bread.
I don't think you ever bring all this bread and be like, while we're waiting on our dinner, let's all consume all this bread. We don't, it's kind of weird how we don't do that at home.
Yeah. Well, I just started being mindful of how I felt after I ate certain things. And bread was the first one for me. And I still eat bread. And I still eat bread when I eat out sometimes. But I'm just mindful of okay, if I eat this, how am I going to feel after? Mm-hmm. And so there's times that after this, I don't care how I feel, and that bread looks really good, and so I'm about to have it.
Right.
Or, we're at an event and we have something going on, and I don't need to be crashing at 3:00 today. There will be no bread. Mm-hmm. Just little things like that. It doesn't have to be bread. It could be whatever it is for you. But that's a way to make food more fuel than how can I eat this so I feel better? I think that's what we think food's going to do. I'm going to eat all this bread and I'm going to feel better because you're starving to death and you sit down to eat. So you're going to eat all this bread and you feel better. Well, you don't feel better. I just think, watching how food affects you, watching why you eat when you eat, why is it that I always want this? Or why do I always, how come every night, I eat this? Or how come every morning I do this? But setting up what you put in your body so that for what your body will then do for you.
Mm-hmm. But when you have a goal, when you have a plan, you're so much more likely to implement these disciplines. As simple as, like, if you know you're going to go walk on the beach the next morning, and go for a 3-mile walk because you and one of your best friends go do that, you're less likely to eat a bunch of bread and desserts after dinner the night before. Mm-hmm. And so that's just a simple principle of, if you have a plan, if you have a goal for activity and things you're wanting to do, that is what's going to keep the discipline to not just eat for pleasure.
Yeah, and not even just eating, but even like if we're going to have cocktails when we go out to eat, or if we're going to have a drink at home, like, if me and Marcy are meeting at the beach at 8 a.m. to go for a 3-mile walk.
5 margaritas is not in the game plan.
Yeah, there's not going to be 2 or 3 margaritas and staying up all night watching Game of Thrones. That's not going to happen.
That's right. So guys, that's probably one that all of us can implement and get better at. Number 10. This is so huge because I have a whole chapter in my book, Next Level Mindset, on the power of words. And you can see this when you're around successful people, that successful people use positive words and have positive body language. Okay? Positive words and body language versus unsuccessful people, negative words are always coming out of their mouth and negative body language. You see, what we're saying with our body a lot of times is just as important or more important than what's coming out of our mouth. And what is coming out of our mouth is very important. So what I've noticed is when I get around a group of very successful people, the words are different and the body language is different. One of the conferences that we went to recently, there was a dinner or after party at the Edition Hotel on the pool deck. And that was a certain tier of people that was at that event. Most of those people were already successful. Many of the speakers at the event were invited, and just kind of like an A-tier list of people at the event were invited to this private event. The language, when you get around successful people that are winning, and not just winning financially, but in their health and in their relationships, the words are different. The body language is different. And so when we can start to understand how important those things are, changes start to happen. So I would tell you, pay attention to what's coming out of your mouth. Is it positive? Does it have life? Does it serve you and others well? And is it encouraging? Is it full of love? Or is it the opposite? Is it negative? And then our body language, just the way we carry ourselves, because there's a victim body language. There's a woe is me body language. I remember early on in my business career, one of our mentors, he said, be a Tigger and not an Eeyore. If you've ever seen Winnie the Pooh, he says, Tigger is a winner. If I had to recruit one of the two into my organization to be successful, I would bet on Tigger every time, not Eeyore. So, and that's their language, and it's the words, and it's also their body language. And so how we approach the world every day, our words, our body language, successful people pay attention to that.
And here's something that this weekend, I'm like a crazy sports person. It's the only thing I watch. But so this weekend, the Chiefs won again, and poor Josh Allen. But if you will listen to what the words that come out of Patrick Mahomes' mouth when he's interviewed, and Andy Reid, so that's like an organizational thing. That organization is where they are because that organization as a whole, they know where they're going.
They have a goal.
They know where they're going. They know, and they are not going to throw anyone under the bus, even on the other team. Mm-mm. They're not going to talk trash about the other team. They're not going to say ugly things about this is the third time. No, that's not going to happen. And then there's another organization that's known as America's team, right? I mean, you love them. Cooper absolutely loves them. But this morning when I get up and I'm in the kitchen and ESPN is on, they're talking about the fact that CeeDee Lamb's mom, which is a receiver for the Dallas Cowboy, she tweets, Dak isn't it. Then Dak's brother tweets, if I could get Dak to leave Dallas, I would. Then another family member of a Cowboy, I'm like, see, that's the difference in a successful team and an unsuccessful team. Because the play, and look, that has nothing to do with Dak. Dak didn't have anything to do with that. CeeDee Lamb didn't have anything to do with that. You can't control what your parents do. Team. But I would be willing to bet that mom and brother are saying things to Dak and CeeDee Lamb that are not helpful. Yeah. And their last game, who had the problems? CeeDee Lamb and Dak. They couldn't throw, they couldn't catch, they couldn't get along. And so I love Dak. I love CeeDee Lamb. I would love to see them do good. But a successful organization is like the Chiefs. They don't care that it's freezing cold and it's going to be one of the coldest games ever. They have a plan and they go with it. And I just think you can see it play out in sports like that. Caitlin Clark would be another one.
Absolutely.
For Iowa.
Absolutely. Winners have positive words and positive body language. Mm-hmm. And losers, negative words, negative body language. Period. So one of the things on this that I would give people a tip about, we all stop saying, just be aware and recognize when you say words that aren't full of life, especially to yourself, because your subconscious mind knows no difference. Even in jest, even sarcasm and joking, I try not to use sarcasm. I try not to joke or jest. Yeah, I'm not, yes, Heather will tell you I'm a pretty serious guy, but I like to have fun, but I don't ever want to sabotage my own subconscious mind with saying anything negative, defeating, or limiting about myself. I only want to speak positive, winning, uplifting, life-giving words, especially about myself, but then because then that's going to extend to everyone else. I think the people that are out there, they say, well, it doesn't matter that I'm saying negative things about myself or my body language is poor. It's not affecting anyone else but me. No, you're wrong. Because the first person you have to take care of is yourself before you can be of service or help to anybody else in a family, in a team, in an organization. So you have to master it first for yourself. And this is the tip I wanted to give people about just words and body language, because a lot of times people don't think about this, but we have a 5-year-old that's a kindergartner, and I know sometimes in like our school system, they want them to sit still and sit straight and
good luck
and be quiet. And there's some of that I think that's damaging and has, especially for boys. And I particularly believe that we're made different, men and women. And so a tip I would give men is take up space. I want my son to grow up and not be feminine and sit there and be quiet and sit like this and do this. No, take up space, be you, be masculine, okay, with your body language. I would tell women the same thing. Be feminine, embrace your femininity and be feminine. And what's going to happen is, and then when you're speaking those positive words, positive body language, men masculine, women feminine, it's going to take you to a whole nother level. And the culture we're living in has skewed all that, where people don't know really the way they're supposed to be. And so when you get clear on
there's
this,
no guidelines. You can be any way you want.
That's right. And we're not sitting here casting any judgment on people at all. We're
just calling out that confusion is being put on people.
Absolutely. And so we're telling you, those of you that are listening, that if you want to go to the next level and you're a man and you see yourself as a masculine man, then embrace that. If you're a woman and you see yourself as a feminine woman and that's what you want to be, embrace that completely with your body language, your words, and don't worry about what the rest of the world is doing. And we understand there's other people that have different lifestyles. We're not casting any judgment on you for the way you want to live, because you can live any way you want to live. But if you see yourself as masculine and as a man, be masculine. If you see yourself as feminine and a woman, be feminine. Positive words, body language versus negative words, negative body language that is not congruent with who you are or who God made you to be. It's going to hold you back and you're not going to win.